I hear the voice of the Lord comes to me crystal clear, resounds through my being. I am going to change the understanding and expression of Christianity in the whole earth in one generation. I remember I was overwhelmed with that. I go, what does that mean? And the fear of the Lord came upon me, and I was weeping and trembling. I've never had an encounter like this awake. And I said, yes, Lord, yes. He said, many have said yes, but they've not yet done it. It was September 1982. I was in a hotel room in Cairo, Egypt, and had this most dramatic encounter with the Lord.
So I remember Mike had done a really long water fast, and then on the heels of that, he went to Cairo, Egypt, and he was away for close to a month. He comes back, and our lives are never going to be the same. This is what he said to me.
In this encounter in Cairo, Egypt, the Lord highlighted 4 values, very, very specific. The first one would be night and day prayer, and the word was intercession. The second one was holiness of heart, or we could call it loving God with all of our heart and loving people. The next one was a commitment to the poor, offering ourselves and extravagant offerings to the poor, embracing a simple lifestyle so we could give more to those that did not have.
And I remember him saying to me, you know, all the days of our life, we're committed to a simple lifestyle so that we can address the poor of the earth.
That would have been O, offerings to the poor. IHOP, P was prevailing faith or the prophetic ministry, because it's the prophetic that strengthens our faith.
The Lord is calling for a house of prayer and a house of intercession to come into being. That'll be open 24 hours a day, to where the saints of God, whenever they get to calling, can go there and begin to pray. The praise will be there. You can go there and be ministered to. You can go there and join in the intercession. It'll be open night and day. It'll be the place that the saints of God will just literally go there and pour themselves out to the Lord like a love offering. And intercession and praise will be there 24 hours a day.
Really, it began in '82, even before that. And I was in a church, and I told the pastor, there's a group of young people that's coming that God is going to use in a big way. And their main calling will be praise and intercession. A friend of mine in Kansas City said, Bob, there's some young people you need to meet. They come from St. Louis. And he said, I think you're supposed to meet them. And I said, yeah, I am.
You know, I remember 36 years ago when Bob Jones first walked in my office with that strange winter coat, those overalls, and he told me all of these things. And I remember thinking, this man is so off. I mean, I had no way of understanding what he said.
On March the 7th of '83, I went over to meet with them, Mike Bickle and some of them. The Lord had told me to wear a coat, a heavy one. It would be a sign that there'd be a double winter that year.
But it's been 50, 60, 70 degrees for 2 or 3 weeks, but he has a winter coat on. And the news said that the spring had come early and the winter was over. And he said, no, he goes, the snows are coming again on the 1st of spring.
And so I went over and I told him several things that I'd been shown about him.
He asked me, he goes, by the way, are you a singer? And I said, no. He goes, that surprises me because I saw these singers and musicians. Are you a musician? I go, no. He goes, do you ever pray for Israel? I said, never. He goes, do you have a connection to Asia? I said, none. And he looked very perplexed. And he goes, so you don't know anything I've been telling you the last couple hours? I said, nothing.
And I was told that they had a major calling. One of them was intercession, 24/7.
He said, you're going to have 24-hour prayer in the spirit of the tabernacle of David with singers and musicians.
And that the flaps would be up to where the whole world would see the glory.
He goes, you're going to pray for Israel. You're going to move on Harry S. Truman's property as a sign and a wonder. You're going to be connected to Asia, and they're going to have these unplugged TV sets in their hands. He goes, all over Asia, they're going to be watching the singers and musicians in Grandview on Harry S. Truman's property on unplugged TV sets, even in the rice paddies.
I told him, you're not going to receive me right now. You won't receive me to the first day of spring. And on the First day of spring when the snow is melting, then I'll tell you the secret of your heart, and you believe me who I am.
So Bob Jones was an incredible hearer. He heard the Lord, and then he just stepped to the plate, and he didn't have to know who they were. He was not really a respecter of persons, from the great to the poor. He would just prophesy over them and speak truth to them. I was just in awe of his ability to continue to do that.
So on the day Bob Jones first walked in my office, this was a year before this building was given to us. He tells me, you're gonna move from Overland Park over to Grandview. Harry is Truman, his property, the Lord's gonna give it to you. And I said, I can't imagine that happening. He sees it at the crossroads of Grandview Road and Blue Ridge Road. He said, the Lord showed me you will be at that intersection and Joel's army will be in training. And what will happen is that from that intersection, the Lord's gonna do something and it's gonna bring you to Arrowhead Stadium. If you go straight down Blue Ridge from where Fort Winter Church is, that is exactly where Arrowhead Stadium is. And he says, you wait and see. Your people may not shop there now, but they will. I guarantee you, you'll be in Grandview. It was about a year later, we moved to Grandview on that very location. I was completely amazed because I'd never seen that location before. Then about a month after I met Bob Jones in March 83, now it's April 83, when the Lord speaks to me so clearly about Daniel 9 and the 21-day fast. I go to Bob Jones' house the next day, and he says, the Lord showed me this 21-day fast, and when it begins on May 7th, and that was the date I already had in my heart. Now the May 7th is still 3-4 weeks out. He goes, there's gonna come a comet across the sky, unpredicted by scientists. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, there will be a comet come across the sky on that day that you've started this fast, which will be May 7th. And then 3 or 4 weeks later, it's in the newspaper, comet unpredicted by scientists comes across America.
It was the fall of 1990. We had 40 prayer meetings at that time throughout the week.
Because of the word I received in Cairo, Egypt about having night and day prayer, for the 17 years that I pastored Metro Christian Fellowship before IHOP started, we had 3 prayer meetings a day.
One of the guys, Larry Bridge, asked if after worship he could say a few words. And he opened his Bible to one of the Psalms. And he said, you know, the Psalms are really sung and we should be singing our prayers. And we were all a little stunned. Noel shared, he said, you know, I really think there's something about this that's in Scripture. I think this is what's going on at the throne of God in Revelation, where it says that they each have a harp and a bowl. And so he coined the phrase, harp and bowl, right there. And we began to talk about it. And the following year, we developed singing our prayers with a whole band. And finally we got to the point where we actually had 2 people up on the microphone praying or singing antiphonally. And I remember the first day it happened, and I turned to Noel afterward, I said, this is where the prayer movement's heading. This is the future. Paul Cain gave a word one night to Noel Alexander, and he said that Noel and Mike were like acetylene and oxygen, and that when they came together, the prayer movement would ignite. And Mike was continuing on with praying from the apostolic prayers. We were developing this way of singing and worshiping together. This would be the explosion in the prayer movement that would cause things to leap forward.
I remember in February of 1999, the Lord was speaking about the beginning of the House of Prayer. Mike had been in Colorado and had been at a leadership meeting there with leaders from all over. And Kingsley Fletcher, a prophet from Africa, prophesied over Mike that it was time to begin the House of Prayer. He began to ask the Lord. He asked the Lord 3 things. He asked the Lord to release a pastor to take over the church, Metro, which Mike had pastored for like 17 years.
Floyd McClung, one of the top leaders in YWAM, was coming through town, and a man called me on the phone and said, hey, Floyd McClung, he'd just like to say hi to you. So he came through, and I said, Floyd, you know, what's your vision? He goes, well, I know I'm leaving YWAM. I'm supposed to plant a church. It's going to be committed to prayer. It's going to be committed to missions. And I'm looking for the major city I'm supposed to do this in. And it comes down to, that's the man.
He also asked that the Lord would provide a building.
My little brother says, I think we found a building, 7,000 square feet, just get in a car and go with, man. We get there, it's an Indian casino.
Within the week, Barb Hartley came to me and he said, hey, I've just got a group of trailers I put together in the building. He said, the Lord has impressed me. If you need those trailers for anything, like for prayer meetings or training young people, it's yours.
We felt like it was prophetic because it was a place people came to get their dreams fulfilled. Not righteously, but so we ended up buying this thing. As I said, one day there'll be thousands of young people that come here and get their dream of God, dream in God in these trailers. I said, one day they'll sing songs of the presence. One day there'll be a kingdom movement that goes forward.
The third thing, really, probably the most important of all those, was that he wanted the Lord to confirm it to his friend Noel Alexander.
Noel Alexander calls me on the phone, just randomly. I'd talked to Noel in a few years. He said, Mike, he goes, I'd like you to come and speak to our men on a Saturday morning in Olathe at my church, and the Lord has given me something to give you.
3 times I had the nudge, so I went over and I said, Mike, you know, I heard you're going to Noel's church tomorrow. And he said, yeah, you want to come? And Mike, of course, is not, you know, showing his hand at all. He just, Noel, hey, what's going on? And Noel said, well, you know, he talked about his trip to England and how he had something unusual happen.
I'm stirred. I'm thinking this couldn't be. He couldn't say the house of prayer. Surely that's not what he's going to say.
I was scheduled to go and preach in a conference in London. I walked out of the conference building and a guy came up to me and he said to me in the parking lot, he said, is your name Noel Alexander? I said, yes. He said, thus saith the Lord. He said, you are to go back to Kansas City and you and Mike Bickle are going to start the 24-hour house of prayer. I went from there to Peterborough and did another conference there. At the end of a conference, once again, I'm in the parking lot, a guy comes up to me and he asks me the same question. And he says to me, is your name Noel Alexander? I said, yeah. He said, I've got a word of the Lord for you. You are to go back to Kansas City and tell Mike Bickle that the two of you are to start a 24-hour house of prayer in Kansas City.
As we're hearing this, as Mike's hearing this, you know, he's realizing, oh my, it's time, you know. So even as we sat there was a soberness in the room. There was an excitement, but it was more sober, I think, than anything. And I remember getting in the car, in Mike's car as we drove off, and Mike was sober. He was going, oh my, he goes, wow.